More big news from Washington today. President Obama naming a new White House communications director, but instead of hiring someone brand new for the job, he hired someone used to defending him, State Department spokesperson Jen Psaki. Now, you'll remember Psaki struggling to defend the president's use of the word random to describe the slaughter at the Paris kosher market.
Well, as you know, I believe, if I remember the victims specifically, there were not all victims of one background or one nationality. So I think what they mean by that is, I don't know that they spoke to the targeting of the grocery store or that specifically, but the individuals who were impacted.
Well, I mean, right, but when the secretary went and paid respects to it, he was with a member of the Jewish community there.
Naturally, given that is the grocery store is one that...
Well, don't you think that the target, maybe even if all the even if the victims came from different backgrounds or different religions, different nationalities, wasn't the store itself was the target? Was it not?
But I mean, that's different than the individuals being. I don't have any more to.
All right. Well, does the administration believe that this was an anti-Jewish an attack on the Jewish community in Paris?
I don't think we're going to speak on behalf of French authorities and what they believe was the situation at play here.
And Charles Krauthammer, author of the bestseller Things That Matter, joins us. Charles, what's your thought on this choice now, moving Jen Psaki over from the State Department to the White House?
Well, I'm not sure it's going to make any difference. I'm not sure that Noah Webster himself would have been able to explain the president's idea that you go to a kosher grocery store on a Friday afternoon and your target are random. I mean, the gunman himself was on the radio during the hostage taking in which he said he'd gone in to kill Jews. So there is no explaining this, and that's why Jen Psaki and also Josh Earnest and others who've tried to explain the president look silly, but it isn't really their fault. They're trying to defend the president who is dancing around the idea that there's anti-Semitism here, there's sort of a targeting of Christians as well, and as we just heard from Carl, that we actually have a movement that is radical Islamist, and we have a president who refuses to say it.
Charles, we got a deadline coming up February 27th. The Department of Homeland Security funding runs out. The House and the Senate are out of town. The House passed a bill, but attached to an immigration aspect of it. They wouldn't fund the president's immigration program. What's going to happen come February 27th?
I don't know what's going to happen, but I know what should happen. I just wrote a column out tomorrow, which is I would advocate to the GOP the thing that they're looking at is a surrender on this. They're going to get the blame if Homeland Security is shut down, even though it'll largely operate nonetheless. So if you're going to get the blame, I think what they ought to do is abolish the filibuster and actually pass the budget for Homeland Security, which leaves out any of the funding in the Immigration Service for the unlawful, illegal executive amnesty of the president, and then send it on to the president. Remember, the Democrats are the ones who attacked the filibuster. They partially dismantled it again on a very party line vote 2 years ago, and I think having begun the demolition, the Democrats have, the Republicans ought to finish it. Abolish the filibuster, take control of the Senate, pass the House a bill, and send it on to the president.
And the president will do what? Sign it or not sign it with that immigration, with stripping out that immigration executive order, essentially?
Well, it's going to make his choice a tough one because it'll change the narrative. Right now, the narrative is radical Republicans will not pass Homeland Security budget, jeopardizing American security while terrorism is rising. If you send it on to the president and he has to do a veto, a public act where he vetoes the funding for the department, the narrative will be that the president, in order to protect an unlawful action on immigration that is extremely unpopular anyway, is risking the security of the country. That's a better narrative, and I think it puts pressure on the president to come to a compromise or to cave on this, which I think is what the Republicans should want.
Charles, thank you, sir.
Pleasure.
And straight ahead, it is what everyone is talking about. Former Governor Jeb Bush and Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu are talking to each other via social media. What are they talking about? Find out next.